Another day again, isn't it fantastic? So, with all the birds and the day is dawn, let us just sit for a moment and just bring ourselves back just to this moment now. Just allowing ourselves to be more present, dropping away from those clever thoughts. It's funny how the mind can become very full of stuff. And what I was thinking about earlier when I woke up this morning was clarity of mind. Clarity of mind. And how different thought patterns really alter one's clarity. And I've never been inside your heads, and luckily for you, you've never been inside my head. But I wonder if clarity is the same for all of us. I know that when we're tired and we get low on energy, then the mind can get very muddled and fuzzy. And I think when we get very stressed, a lot of people have said to me about the fuzziness and the lack of ability to think straight and the confusion rather than clarity. And then we tend to switch off and sort of digress away or hide away from it, and then go for distractions, big distractions, to stop us from reflecting. So I suppose what I'm talking about is the reflection we have, or the ability to reflect upon how we're feeling. So maybe we feel first and then we reflect on it. And again, this comes back to the core, the boring old core I'm talking about, of sitting and doing the practice. The practice of observing, taking time in the moment, to allow ourselves to really appreciate, without trying, just what it is to be sitting. The sun coming up, the blue sky, the birds. Because life is now, and it might sound a really stupid thing to say, but in this moment is your life. The future never comes. Have you noticed that? The future is something in your mind which you project forward. But of course, you never get there, because it becomes now. And when it's now, it's now, it's not the future. So the future doesn't exist. And the past, you can't go back to it. You can't relive it. You can memorize bits of it, maybe the salient factors which stick out in your mind. But that too is very much not present in this moment. It's just a memory. So we only ever have now. And yet we tend not to practice being in the now. We tend to always drift off into the future. What ifs, shoulds, musts, maybe fears, maybe anxieties, maybe wishes and wants, desires. And I suppose it's what I'm talking about with clarity is, how do we balance the two? Because living in the moment is insightfully terribly difficult. it's not the easiest of things to do, to be present. We can do it momentarily. We can stop for a moment now and listen. And almost like holding my breath, so long as I keep myself focused, then I don't think of anything else. Or do I? Maybe I'm still having a ticker tape of underlying thoughts there, watching myself sitting, watching myself being. So there's a whole host of reality, of clarity, of observation, which we have to get to know better. Otherwise, we are literally bouncing around in the dark. We consider we're in the full, consider everything is, what's the word? Fine, and that's how it is. But really, our eyes are closed. We're not aware of how we do what we do to ourselves. Therefore, it's important to practice being in the now, to allow the clarity of insight and oversight to help us notice. And the practice we need to do is to, on purpose, sit, focus. Well, like I said, we could also do it through the exercises, of course, exactly the same thing, but it's taking the mind into the moment as much as you can, noticing when your mind makes a story, it goes off, it gets distracted, you're taken away from the moment, and just drawing yourself back just slightly, like this silk thread on this. The analogy I have, I share with you, is this: my focus of attention is like a kite. It's floating here, and a thought comes in, whoosh, throws it off to one side, and then I notice suddenly I'm not here, I'm over there. I then pull back the thread very gently, and okay, I'm back here again. I can now listen to the birds singing. I can take my breath. I can feel my breath. Whoosh, off it goes, and another thought comes flying in. And it's like a continual process of this sort of the winds. It's like sometimes there's no wind, but most times there's always a little breeze somewhere. There's a little movement in the trees. Very seldom is there nothing at all. And maybe it is this balance between the two we have to work with. Being in the moment, because that's all there is, and the thought of the mind going forward, and the memory of the mind going backwards. And clarity is the sort of intermeshing of these, so as to create the platform of the truest reality you can have. What always astounds me is when I look on the news, or I see some newspapers, or listen to the radio, and suddenly you think people's realities are very different. We tend to, well, talking personally, tend to group yourselves with people who are similar to you. And that makes your clan, your group, your tribe. And then you hear of these other people living on the planet who, in their own way, are doing their own thing, and they believe in what they're doing. And you can hardly say they're right or wrong, but the way they see things is very differently. I wonder, and it's a question I was talking with some friends yesterday about, is there a truth? Is there an underlying fundamental truth of clarity of life? Or is that just another made up story? It's something I ponder upon, and I have my opinions on, but it's just my opinion. But for you, for me, to be happier, more contented, and live a richer, more peaceful life, one in which I think we can gain a sense of satisfaction and purpose, is that if we can get a clarity into what we're doing, how we're doing what we're doing, without judging it, and then listening to that inner voice. Because my philosophy is that the less I talk to myself and the more I listen, the more I can hear, almost like guidance. And that sounds a bit airy-fairy, but I have a suspicion there's like an energy, or a stream of energy which actually knows more than I do. meaning Hugh himself only knows a very little. But if I can tap into something which is perhaps a little bit more eternal, it's like the wisdom and the sacredness of the woodlands or the hills or the stream or the sea. There's something there which is timeless. Now you can either go to the woods, the hills, the streams, the sea, and you can think and you can have a nice picnic and fun and go swimming and everything and be totally distracted in the pleasure of it all. Nothing wrong with that. Great. Or you can tune into another level of being with it, which is far more of a clarity, or it creates the clarity of the immensity of being a human being. And I think maybe that being in a urban situation, being inside a city, cramped in with everyone, where there is very little nature evident. There is, obviously, there's trees and there's plants and there's parks, but there's an awful lot of straight lines and buildings and regulations and traffic lights and all that sort of linear conceptual thinking, which precludes us from integrating into this amazing interconnected web of stuff, which is life. So we're living life now in this moment, yet we're being affected by a deeper, a more profound energy. And if that's blocked with concrete and tarmac and glass and all plastic and all of that, then we get less and less of it. Then we use this type of stuff, the television, the laptops, and we watch David Attenborough, and we go, oh, isn't nature fantastic? Yeah, but that's a two-dimensional experience of it in a linear way. And it's an edited version, and it's giving out a particular story. It's not the same as going out, sitting under a tree, sitting in a field, being in your garden. Put your feet in the stream, put your feet in the sea, stand on the pebbles and feel, don't think. And that's like getting away from the conceptual mind, the clever mind, the linear mind, into that more spacious, rounded openness. Now, I'm not saying we can do that all the time, but it's the balance at the moment. At the moment, we've got all linear and no reality. We need to bring a bit back so that we can actually feel more of that which we know we are. That allows this clarity of thought to balance all the inputs, rather than just being focused too much on this two-dimensional linear stuff. And that's why I say talking's all very well. And it's good to understand. And it is good to understand. We need to understand as human beings. That's part of the power of being a human being. But when we do too much thinking and we isolate ourselves from that which has created us, like we'll do in the moment, that bringing the energy down into us by those Qigong movements and drawing the energy up from the earth, it may sound very fanciful, but it is like opening ourselves up to that which really is and always has been and is our heritage for millennia before us. So to live a full, rich, complete, happy, purposeful life, we need to do this practice and listen. And we have to listen to whatever that little voice is inside of yourself and not get scared of it, even if it challenges the logic of the linear society. Maybe it needs to. Maybe that's what you need to do. I don't know. That's your story. That's your life. For me, I think it does challenge a lot of my preconditioning, everything I absorbed as a child and was taught, and questioning it not in a linear way of trying to, is that right, is that wrong, but in an empathetic and compassionate and intuitive way. I begin to understand how Hugh creates his own problems, how Hugh's view really colors Hugh's view. And then if I stand back a bit and look at Hugh's view, I can actually feel the difference between it. And sometimes it just creates confusion. Sometimes it's not joined up. Sometimes there are bits floating around which don't make sense. And I have to leave them at that and just kind of accept that's what it is, because that's what it is. The fact that I have no insight into it, that's just part of my development and where I'm going. But the more I can sit with it and allow it and dance with it and play with it or leave it alone or whatever you'd like, analogy you'd like to put, it will give me a form of understanding of what is this life all about. What am I doing on this planet? What are we doing here? I sat yesterday and watched these squirrels and a wood pigeon and two blackbirds all eating the same food together. And there was this kind of dynamic of what they were doing. They were kind of like moving around each other. They had social distancing without a shadow of a doubt. The squirrel and the wood pigeons kind of like looked at each other and sort of moved around about a meter. They did a meter, and it was very funny. Just watching them, I just think, well, they're just there. That's what they're doing. And then I coughed, and my God, they just all flew off and went up the trees and oof, just like that, because the cough was like such a vibrant interjection into their reality. And then slowly they came back down the trees, flew back down, and carried on munching the grain, and grapes, which are on the floor. I say that because they're totally in the moment. I don't suppose they know from a reptilian point of view, from a survival point of view, how to look after themselves. But I don't think they sit there worrying about the future or considering the past. They're very much in the present moment. And yet we are distinctly different. So the clarity is even more poignant and important for us to really work with, but not worry about it. Don't get too upset about it. It's allow that clarity to arrive through, like we're going to do now, some exercise, and then some sitting, and then when during the day, just take time. It's not how often you do it, for how long you do it. It's the with which you do it. That's so important. Don't make it into something awfully a thing you must do. No. Enjoy being in the present moment. Make it enjoyable, make it satisfying.